We are live. Hello, critical thinkers. Hope all is well. Before anything, one thing I'd love for everyone to do when you have the opportunity, please like the video, like the live stream, comment on the stream, and also if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It greatly helps with the algorithm. As as everyone can see, we have a very special guest. I was forced to go into my closet and pull out my Mr. Rogers sweater. So I have a very special sweater on for tonight. And as you can see, I am not as nicely dressed as JB Brooks from the Freelance, but I'm trying to compete here. So do me a favor and cut me a little bit of slack, okay? Before you start commenting on my wardrobe. So, um, so as I mentioned, we have a very special guest. So can everyone please write JB in the chat? That'd be greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. And again, for everyone just coming on, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, at the bottom of the screen, you will see a link for donations to JB Nicholas and the Freelance. I will ask everyone tonight, don't worry about super chatting me or sending any cash apps. If you want to send some support, please send some support to JB Nicholas and the amazing work that he's doing at the Freelance. Okay, so before we jump to JB, there's a couple things that I do want to say. So for those of you who don't know, who's coming to Critical Conversations for the first time, this channel was truly birthed in December of 2024 after I saw the Robert Brooks video. Okay, just like many of you who saw the Robert Brooks video, it changed who I am and it changed my mission in life. Okay, this channel used to be a channel on human resources. I was doing videos on sexual harassment, hostile work environment, on managing employees, and then this channel shifted significantly. And during that time that I became aware of the brutality and corruption at the Department of Corrections, at corrections, I was looking for information and I was having a hard time finding it. And it didn't take me long, but I eventually found the Freelance, the freelancenews.org. So when other media stations were kind of, giving, Robert Brooks maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I was jumping to the Freelance and getting my information from the Freelance. So first and foremost, JP, I have to say thank you to you for doing the work that you did, because in part, your work kind of birthed this YouTube channel. So I want to say thank you for that. Thank you.
I want to say thank you, Fred, because I'm just a one man band, so it's hard to do everything. And I appreciate you helping get the word out and the spreading the reporting that I've been doing.
Yeah, no, it's truly an amazing resource. And the thing that I always do, and I try to be a good YouTuber per se, right? So I try to link all my videos. I try to cite all the sources. Even if I use photos, I definitely put that in there. And my goal is to kind of, have people watch the videos, but for those that want to go even deeper than what I'm going, to go to the original source and read the articles, right? And go deeper. So I want to say again, thank you for that. You have something you want to say, JB?
Well, you did it right, because in the beginning, I remember you reached out to me and you asked, if it would be okay if you talked about some of the reporting that I've been doing, broadcast some of the reporting that I've been doing, and I thought, sure, great, that'd be a great thing. So glad to meet you, Fred, and thanks for finally having me on your show so we could talk about some of these things that interest us both and interest the viewers more importantly.
Oh yeah. No, there's a lot of there are many people who they're dying for the information and they're dying for the places to go to get that information. So I'm just thankful that I'm here. I'm thankful that I'm doing this content. I'm thankful for you. So, but let us, if we can, go into like our main topic tonight, right? Because I thought you were doing some very fascinating work. So in light of the Robert Brooks murder, right, I started to do my own research on the disciplinary process, on the collective bargaining agreement, and I could not believe these things existed, right? And so the work that you're doing stems from a civil lawsuit that you put in against the New York State Department of Corrections. This is back in February 3rd. So for those of you who don't know, I'll just give a 15-second highlight, and then you'll go really deeper, right? So basically, JB Nicholas is suing the New York State Department of Corrections to be able to sit in on the disciplinary hearings for those correction officers who were charged and involved in the Robert Brooks murder. So, JB, let me know if that sounds accurate, and then if you want to go into like how this lawsuit started.
So Robert Brooks and Messiah Nantwi now, Fred. So um, the disciplinary hearings are secret for corrections officers in New York State. The Department of Corrections does not allow the public or reporters to witness its administrative disciplinary hearings for corrections officers, and that's a problem. Not only for reporters trying to get the facts to report to the public, but it's also a problem for the public because other reporting has shown that the disciplinary system for corrections officers is not effective. In other words, it doesn't deter misconduct. And I think the alleged murders of Robert Brooks and Messiah Nantwi show that unequivocally. And so just, so listeners are clear on what we're talking about. There's a criminal process, right? If you violate the criminal law, you get indicted by a grand jury, you get hauled into criminal court. If it goes that far, you have a trial by jury. If you're convicted, you go to prison. Now, in parallel, but independently of the criminal justice system, many employers, state employers, government employers who hire, as government working as an employer, hiring people to work for it, like police officers and prison guards, there has to be a disciplinary system that handles violations of administrative rules. So police officers and corrections officers are special in the fact that they not only have to abide by the law, the criminal law, they have to abide by whatever rules and administrative rules or administrative regulations that the law enforcement agency that they work for promulgates for them. So these are things like, some of these things are really minor, right? Some of these things are like, you have to wear your hat when addressing members of the public, all right? That's not, if you violate that rule, that's not going to get you, fired, right? That's going to get you a smaller penalty, something like maybe a loss of a vacation day, a reprimand, a letter in your folder or something like that. But it also handles serious things, such as it can handle criminal charges that are not prosecuted by a district attorney in New York. So sometimes you see on the list of charges, you'll see criminal charges as well as administrative rule violations. Now, the purpose, of these rules and regulations and disciplinary hearings are to make sure that guards don't kill prisoners, right? That's basically not only like that they act professionally in accordance with, law enforcement standards, but that they don't kill anybody. That's like the main thing, and they don't torture anybody, right? So they're serious. They can be very serious as well, and they can result in firing. So it has to be calibrated, it has to be versatile. But above all, it has to be effective. It
Yeah.
has to deter misconduct, whether it's criminal or administrative rules. It has to be effective enough to deter misconduct, because otherwise, what's the purpose of it, right? Why have a disciplinary hearing at all if guards are going to get away with it all the time? It's so it has to have teeth. That's the kind of like thing that lawyers and public officials say. An administrative disciplinary process, whether it's for students in high school, whether it's for postal workers on the job, whether it's for police officers, or whether it's for corrections officers, it has to be effective. And what we're learning is the fact that the public is not allowed to witness these hearings, and reporters only get to like report on it secondhand after it's mentioned in some other kind of court document. The secrecy makes it ineffective, and statistics have shown that in like 19 out of 20 cases where the Department of Corrections has settled a civil lawsuit for abuse, that the guards don't get disciplined at all. There was a guard, very infamous case in the 90s. This guy Cunnell from Eastern down in Ulster County, New York. This guy distributed white supremacist literature to other guards on the job in the Eastern Correctional Facility, which is maximum security correctional facility. Now, he didn't get fired. He got a slap on the wrist. What did he do next? He flew the Nazi flag from his house on Hitler's birthday. People got First Amendment rights, even law enforcement officials. But if you're working in a prison and the population of the prison is predominantly Black, Hispanic, and you're flying the Nazi flag from your house, there's a problem. Still, Cunnell doesn't lose his job. He keeps his job. He doesn't lose his job until he rapes somebody in the prison. All right? So, this is the kind of system, and that was 25 years ago, and nothing has changed. This is the kind of system, this is what's going on that is not being addressed. Guys are getting beaten. Guys are getting effectively tortured, right? Beaten for a long amount of time, held down, choked out. All kinds of horrible stuff that you think or you hope only goes on in other places, but in fact is happening right here in New York State, the heart of liberalism in America. And they have prisoners getting murdered. So when this happened, as someone who was formerly incarcerated, I decided that, I had to really dig into this and report on this and explain, the system as I know it, from my perspective. And part of the reporting, part of this story of the murder of Robert Brooks and the murder of Messiah Nanwy, part of the story is the disciplinary system. And if we can't see, if the public and reporters can't see the disciplinary system, there's no accountability. And so the lawsuit that I filed on behalf of the freelance so that I could report on these things to the public was just so that I could reveal the truth on what's going on behind closed doors in these disciplinary hearings in general, and specifically in the Robert Brooks and Messiah Nanwy cases, because we know that there's a lot of things that have yet to be revealed. And answers to these questions might be found at the disciplinary hearings. So that's why I filed the lawsuit. Now, like I said, if it's successful, and so far it hasn't been, but if it's eventually successful, then the public will be allowed in and there'll be some light shined on these things, and maybe there'll be more accountability because, one of the main reasons why government functions, whether they be these administrative disciplinary hearings or public hearings of another kind on rules on zoning regulations, these things have to be transparent, Fred.
Oh yeah, yeah, and just in my opinion, one thing I believe why they would want reporters and someone like you out of those disciplinary hearings is that what would be uncovered would be history and evidence of previous beatings, of previous assaults, because as you know, every time we hear these correction officers' name in the media, this is not their first rodeo, and their names are always connected to civil lawsuits. So,
well, we found that to be true in the Robert Brooks case because, as I reported for the freelance, that two of the guards who allegedly killed Robert Brooks were sued earlier for abusing other prisoners, and in a deposition, one of the prisoners who sued them, this guy Alvarez, identified them specifically as the beat up squad.
yeah.
So there's something. Yes, you're right. The opening up the disciplinary hearings would lead to greater public scrutiny, including information about not just the acts of misconduct alleged in that particular hearing, but if they're found guilty when it comes time to sentence, then we'd also find out about whatever previous instances they'd been accused of misconduct. And the lawsuit that I filed, it doesn't just seek public access to the hearing; it seeks the records of those hearings as well, which would include the disciplinary records of the officers who killed Robert Brooks and who killed Messiah Natwe, because we don't have their disciplinary records yet.
Gotcha. So it seems as though what you're trying to do is kind of, put some light on the darkness, right? Put some light on the darkness, expose, history and patterns of abuse. And I would think the reason why they also want to keep you out is for liability purposes. Because once Docs admits or releases information that these officers were involved in previous assaults and previous beatings and previous tortures, that shows culpability, in my opinion, in my unlegal opinion, right? So I think it shows responsibility and there's ownership that Docs has to take for still employing these individuals.
Right. So when it comes to these hearings, the New York Court of Appeals has ruled that New York has a tradition of open administrative hearings. So, for example, workmen's compensation hearings are open to the public under a 1983 New York State Court of Appeals decision. And for listeners who don't know, the New York State Court of Appeals is the highest court in New York State. So when they talk about the American system of government, they call it a federalist system. And what they mean by that is there's dual sovereign. So you have the states have their own courts and the federal government has their own courts as well. And sorry, you broke up there a little bit.
Okay.
And the state courts get to make their own rules for what goes on in the state, right? So New York's Court of Appeals held that unless the legislature specifically requires some hearings to be private, they're supposed to be presumptively open to the public. And that's clearly established precedent from the New York Court of Appeals that unless the legislature requires a particular disciplinary hearing or administrative hearing to be closed, it's presumed to be open. And in this case, the Department of Corrections has decided not to follow the law as promulgated by the New York Court of Appeals. Now, when I filed the suit, I filed the suit in Albany because that's where the department's central office is. But for some reason, the lawsuit filed in state court ended up in Sullivan County, in front of a judge in Sullivan County, which is about 150 miles southwest of Albany. Now, this is sort of a mystery to me because usually they stay within the county, right? Like you could get assigned to a county judge in New York. There are county judges and Supreme Court judges. They're the same level, their trial level, but they just have different titles. All right. They both have the same power, more or less. And so it's not unusual for the kind of lawsuit that I filed to get appointed to any kind of judge in that county. But it is unusual to get appointed to a judge outside the county, and not just outside, like in an adjoining county, in a county like 5 counties over. All right.
Wow.
And they basically gave it to a judge who they couldn't have gave it from the public's perspective of wanting public access. They couldn't have gave it to a worser judge in New York State. You know, this guy, not only was a lot of judges are former prosecutors, right? That's just part of the playing field. You accept that. This guy wasn't just a former prosecutor. He was the son of a prison guard. Okay.
Wow.
And so, you know, no surprise that what he did with the lawsuit, and of course, dismiss it in the harshest possible way. Okay. And so that's what the court did. And it's on appeal right now to the third department, to the appellate division in Albany. So in New York's courts, they have three levels of judges. They have Supreme Court or county court. They have the appellate division, and then they have the Court of Appeals. So right now we're in the appellate division on that case. The only bright spot in that case was that the court ruled that my Freedom of Information law request for the records, the disciplinary records, the court dismissed that without prejudice on a procedural ground. So I immediately refiled a second lawsuit in Albany County, FOIL, just on that one basis, FOIL records alone. And so that's pending now for a decision. It just got submitted to the judge today, as a matter of fact. And then,
so not only do they want to bar you from being a part of the disciplinary hearings, but they're not responding to FOIA requests for copies of the disciplinary records too. They've outright rejected that request.
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. So, you know, maybe if we can take a step back, because I think one thing that we keep hearing, especially with Daniel Marticello, the commissioner of docs, he says a lot, you know, it's out of my hands. When he talks about terminating correction officers, it's quote unquote out of my hands. Could you maybe give us a summary of the disciplinary process for those more serious charges, like what we see with assaults and torture and stuff of that nature?
Right. So how it works is the union, when docs issues what they call a notice of suspension or a notice of discipline, and that's a sort of like charging document that lays out the charges, and then if you contest the charges, then the way the contract is structured, you file a union grievance. And then that grievance gets submitted to a private arbitrator. So this is another problem. If you're looking at it from the perspective of a citizen who wants an effective disciplinary system for law enforcement, the private arbitrators are a problem. And the reason why they're a problem is because they're not accountable to the public, right? They're private. And basically, what has happened is state law requires the commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services, currently Daniel Marticello, we'll see how long that lasts, to maintain discipline among his correction officers. Okay, state law requires this of whoever is the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. But instead of hiring, hearing officers hired by docs to conduct these hearings, docs has negotiated a contract with the guards union that allows these hearing officers to be private arbitrators. And these are lawyers in private practice who frequently have represented law enforcement in these hearings in the past. And that's how, they're familiar with the process. But as the statistics show over the last 20 years, that these guys let guards get away with murder. Sometimes literally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it might have been the Marshall Project. They've done some research and data that said that in 10 cases that Docs was looking to terminate a correction officer, that only one of them, 1 out of 10 officers actually get terminated. So
that's correct.
The numbers are very low.
That's the reporting. Yeah. Yeah. That's why when I say that the disciplinary system for prison guards in New York is broken, is toothless, and ineffective, that's why I'm saying it, because in 9 out of 10 cases, docs can't fire the guards that they want to fire.
No. And then also my understanding is there might be a financial conflict of interest, because these arbitrators, I believe they're paid for by NYSCOBA, by the union. Is that accurate from what you know?
I'm not sure. It may be a split. They may split it to cost. But this is another problem. We don't know basic questions. We don't know basic answers. We don't know. And the public should know, especially now that these guys have allegedly murdered 2 prisoners in less than 3 months, while everybody was scrutinizing them. I mean, what's going on? It just seems there's a total breakdown in discipline. And at least at these correctional facilities where it happened, Marcy for Robert Brooks and Midstate for Messiah Nantwey, just a total breakdown in discipline. A lot of people are asking these questions. Why? What is going on? So there is a crisis in the prison system that pre-existed these killings.
Yeah, and I think also the public may have a misconception. I had a few people recently tell me that all of these correction officers no longer have their jobs, and I try to say that's not the truth. Most of them, I believe, and JB, you correct me if I'm wrong, out of 18 officers involved, maybe 2 of them resigned, but in total, they still legally
think about this for a minute.
Yeah.
Corrections officers went on strike, and 2,000 of them got fired on the 22nd, 23rd day. These guys killed 2 prisoners, and they're still working for docs. They're suspended without pay, but they're still working for docs. So if you kill a guy, you get to stay a CO and go through a hearing process. But if you go on strike, you get fired automatically. Now, my job isn't to say, as a journalist, isn't to say what's right and what's wrong unless I'm writing an editorial. My job is to report the facts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it really boggles the mind that these officers technically, even though they're suspended without pay, that they're technically still employees of docs, still employees of docs, even after all this time. So a lot of people
and if
out
they
there are
get
saying that
acquitted, and if they get acquitted, they'll be entitled to back pay.
back pay, correct, correct, correct. So just if we can go back chronologically, you mentioned that you submitted your you submitted your civil paperwork, and then it got shut down, and now it's at the appellate division. Is that correct? Did I
Yeah,
understand that?
yeah, that's correct. So during, but while we lost the first round of the lawsuit, we found out some interesting things. So the
Hmm.
hearings are happening, according to the Attorney General's office. Um, the hearings started in April and will continue throughout the summer. So when the judge that in Sullivan County dismissed the lawsuit, I immediately made a motion to the appellate division for what they call expedited consideration, which means like uh, normally if it takes a year for an appeal to get heard, they can do it in a month. And in this case, frequently I'm a critic of the New York State Attorney General's office of Letitia James, but when it comes to the lawyer who was handling the appeal for her office, I actually have some respect because she didn't oppose my motion for expedited consideration. She actually said that she'd be able to accommodate it, which was sort of extraordinary because the Attorney General's office had fiercely opposed it in the court below. But when you get to the appellate division level, they have a different division within the Attorney General's office called the Solicitor General, whose office is responsible for uh, representing the state in the appellate division and in the Court of Appeals. And they have to kind of look at the big picture and think of things that the trial level people don't have to think about. But even though the Attorney General didn't oppose the motion for expedition, the appellate division denied it.
Oh,
The third department, and guys who've been around remember the third department used to be sort of like going to Georgia. Guys did everything not to try to like not file their appeal with the third department. It had a very harsh reputation in the
hmm.
90s. Um, but anyway, so that's the third department being the third department, and some things don't change, and so here we are. The Attorney General has to file a brief by about the 15th of June is when their brief
Okay.
is due. And then I file a reply brief 2 weeks after that. And then the court will schedule a date. And what I was told a month ago is that the court was setting hearing dates for November.
Okay.
A month ago. So that means that
Wow.
by the time they get around to scheduling my appeal, in this case, it'll be for 2022, and the administrative hearings will already be over.
Wow. Wow. So so ultimately, if you are victorious and you end up winning, how would things change in terms of the landscape for incarcerated individuals, for the general public? How would things change? What do you think would be different?
Well, like I said, my interest, the reason why I filed the lawsuit was not to affect change, but rather to gain public access so that I can report on what's going on in these hearings and show the public what's going on, and then then the public can take whatever action that they feel is necessary um, to correct whatever problem that they see. So that being said, as you pointed out, Fred, and as we talked about earlier, when government proceedings are subjected to public scrutiny, things tend to change.
Yep.
Because it's not secret anymore.
No. No. No.
And whatever you were doing behind the scenes to help your boys out, you can't really do that anymore because people are going to see, people are going to ask questions like, well, why are these? We saw the evidence ourselves, and it seems like if guys are getting off in the face of this evidence, it seems like there's a problem. So, so that's why public scrutiny, is important.
Absolutely. So, in terms of Robert Brooks and the current court proceedings, do you have any thoughts, or do you tend to stay away from making any predictions in terms of ultimately how many convictions we'll see? Any thoughts on Walraff's plea deal, his upcoming sentencing, or do you just want to report on it and stay away from it?
Well, I mean, two cases we have to, because the cases are different, right? So the Robert Brooks case has the video. So that's in its own category. The Messiah Nantwi case doesn't have the video. And the guy was facing 2 murder charges at the time. So that's in an entirely other category. So you can't talk about both cases together. You of course, as you pointed out, you really shouldn't generalize and speculate about what's going to go on in court. What you can say is that Fitzpatrick has been methodical, thorough, patient, determined, successful. So far, guys have pleaded guilty. And everybody that pleaded guilty, is going to end up on the witness stand. So, the Brooks guys, I would assess, in my judgment, as a keen observer of the criminal justice system and the courts for almost 30 years, that those guys are going to have a hard time getting acquitted. We're going to find out a lot about Oneida County juries. We're going to find out a lot about Oneida County when these trials start rolling around. I already know a little bit about Oneida County. It's a mixed county. You have like farms, you have the hood, you have black, you have white, you have all these new folks. So it's a very mixed county. It's not one or the other. Okay. So there will be a strong faction represented in the jury pool that will favor acquittal, that will want to give law enforcement the benefit of the doubt. There's no question, but there's going to be other factions in the jury pool that are going to perhaps look at the case a little more neutrally and not come to it predisposed, to law enforcement, and were willing to hear the evidence out in full. So, is there a chance that these guys are going to get acquitted? Yeah, of course. I mean, cops get acquitted all the time. But I think I would assess that these guys are going down. The Nantwi guys, we don't know a lot about that case, and it's complicated by the fact that he was facing those 2 charges at the time, so it's like I can't say, I don't feel comfortable assessing that prosecution at all, because there's just so little known, about it. I will say that I have heard a lot. that hasn't been reported about it, and it seems like that those guys also are going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No,
I
it's
mean,
funny, JB, because I'm sorry, get
they really, you know, they really, they really beat that guy.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I mean, without mercy. I
yeah.
mean, disfigured, you know. So,
Yeah, it's
it's
it's it's
hard. It's
interesting because
horrible.
we
It's
have a
horrible.
it's horrible. Yeah. We actually have a comment here from Sunset. Sunset asked, how can they be acquitted if they are on camera? So my thought process is just because it's on camera doesn't mean they won't. It doesn't mean they will or won't be acquitted. It all depends on the jury. I think just like what JB said, right?
Yeah, I mean, uh, Rodney King, man. Like how did those cops get acquitted? You know, I mean, uh, how did any cop? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they're able to convince juries that there's more to it,
yeah,
and it's like at a certain point you got to just trust your eyes, what you
yeah,
see. You know,
yeah. And there's one thing that I've covered in previous videos is that one of the attorneys in the Robert Brooks defendant stated that they may try to get the body cam evidence not in trial, that they may make a motion to dismiss it.
yeah.
So that's a
Well,
possibility.
that doesn't stand a snowball's chance
Yep.
in hell of succeeding. Um, for any number of reasons. There's no way that
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree.
that video is coming in, and they're going to have to get up on the witness stand if they have any hope of getting acquitted. They're going to have to get up on that witness stand and say, "I have a body double. I have a twin. It
Mm,
wasn't me."
yeah.
Because that's the only way that those guys
Yeah.
should get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm, mm. Is there anything else around the lawsuit that you want the public to know? And are there any ways that we can support you in what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, just spread the word. Read, go to the freelance news.org, and if you haven't, and just read some stuff. I mean, it's free up there, for everyone to read. And if you have like a little spare change laying around, you can donate that. Whatever you have is greatly appreciated. I mean, this is a community effort. I'm not getting rich off of this. I'm here to serve the public. You know, basically, I'm a detective for the people, and you know, my people in this case happen to be formerly incarcerated New Yorkers. So I'm out here finding the truth and helping expose it. What we know to be the truth, and what nobody listened to for decades, and now finally, their eyes are starting to open and be like, oh, wow, like we let this go on for this long. Yeah, you did, and now
Yeah.
you got to fix it.
Amen. You got to fix it. It has to be fixed. Okay. Hey, JB, I really want to thank you for coming on, for being very giving of your time. Hopefully, we can connect again, and hopefully, we'll have a very promising update about your civil case.
Thanks for having me, Fred, and I look forward to coming back and updating your viewers on the latest.
Okay. All right, JB, take care. Okay, everyone, that was JB Nicholas with the Freelance, a phenomenal independent journalist. Definitely go out and support JB if you have the opportunity. please consider making a donation to JB Nicholas and the freelance and support the work that they do there. Again, as I mentioned, uh, what they have done has really helped birth Critical Conversations HR. So a special thank you to JB Nicholas. And in closing, to everyone out there, if you found value in this live stream, please like it, share it, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. For those of you who still want more news, I'm doing a second live stream in about another 5 minutes concerning the Messiah Nantry case and updates on two criminal defendants. So hang tight. Well, don't hang tight. Leave this stream and hop on my next one. Okay. Take care. God bless.